covers the Colts, and he's an NFL draft analyst for A to Z Sports. We've had a lot of A to Z guys on here. And it's
A to Z guys, hey, they do it right, man. They're good.
I don't know what they're doing over there. They got like a stacked roster or something. But please welcome to the show. By the way, as always, brought to you guys by BetUS. Please welcome to the show, Destin Adams. Destin, how you doing, my friend?
Hey, guys. How you guys doing?
Great, man. Number one, appreciate you joining the show, as always. We're talking Colts-Lions. That's kind of been the theme this week. And obviously the Lions, offensively, defensively, it's been great. We've been kind of wishing for something like this, a team that's just this dominant. Now, you got people doubting the Lions, which we kind of like. It's new. I want to get your perspective kind of on this game. Anthony Richardson last week looked great. It seemed like him being able to be kind of reset with the benching. What's kind of your early feel on how this game's going to go for the Colts? What's kind of the vibe around Indianapolis?
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting that you're saying like people are still doubting the Lions. I don't know how anyone can watch the Lions, especially over the last month, and doubt them. But I mean, to each their own, I guess. I mean, I think this Lions team is proving to be a lot of people said they were the best roster on paper. That doesn't really matter, but now we're seeing it on the field in November. This is a dang good Lions team. So I think anyone doubting this Lions team is kidding themselves. I think this is going to be a big one. I mean, last week getting Anthony Richardson back on the field it felt like just what the doctor ordered for this Colts team that had no life for 3 weeks. I think Richardson came in. I think they were able to establish an identity on offense. You don't want to usually do that in week 11, but that's what happened with this Indianapolis team. So they just want to build on that. I think this Lions team is going to be tough. I think the matchup on paper is probably going to be the toughest game that the Colts play, especially how the Lions operate. But the Colts do what they can to claw back and keep games close. So I'm just hoping we don't see a repeat of what you guys did to Jacksonville.
I interrupted today's video to tell you about the sponsor of today's video, and that is BetUS. You can head over to BetUS right now and get in on the team total. It's over under 28.5. I love it. You place $50, you win $43. I'm going to go ahead and lock this in. And there you go. Locked in. And don't forget, don't gamble anything you're not already willing to lose. And if you guys do place your first deposit, you get 150% in your first deposit, 125% on your second and third deposit, up to $2,000. Now, let's get back to the video.
Hey, Destin, I appreciate you joining. I do want to just ask you, and this is kind of not the Lions-Colts matchup, but just kind of picking your brain on the Colts situation. Obviously, the last few weeks, it's been very, very public, and national media has been picking it up, what's going on with AR and all of that. What are your thoughts on Anthony Richardson and them kind of moving forward in the quarterback room as QB1? I know it probably has been the 2 years of Anthony Richardson that Colts fans want. But is it still like, hey, full faith in him going forward, even after the benching and then last week? Like, do you want to see more out of him? Where are you at with that? And how do you think this Anthony Richardson situation will play out over the next 12 months?
Yeah, I mean, I think the expectation with Anthony Richardson, no matter where he ended up in the draft, should have been that it was going to be a work in progress. Like there's a lot of talent there, but like usually when you say a prospect is raw, it's because like they just don't have a certain element of their game yet, and that needs to be toned. With Richardson, NFL teams didn't have enough tape to even like understand what this kid could do. They just saw the wow plays, and they were like, man, if we can make those happen more consistently, like this is an actual superstar. The Colts end up being the team that take him at number 4, and they tell every single person that will listen, like, this is going to be a work in progress. You need to be patient with the kid. And then they benched him after 10 games, which makes it just a crazy situation. And it's been a wild month to cover this team. It's been a wild few years to cover this team with all the like ins and outs of what's been going on, actually. But I think Anthony Richardson has a lot of faith in that locker room. I think going back to him was a decision led by this locker room, and the players knew that they needed this kid back on the field. Because there's been a whole lot of conversation about who gives the Colts the best chance to win games. And while you can say Joe Flacco as a veteran might be smarter and understand parts of the NFL that this kid doesn't know yet, I think we got to see last week that Richardson elevates this offense to a level that Joe Flacco at age 39 just isn't doing. So if Anthony Richardson is able to play composed, play confident, I think this kid gives the team the best chance to win games.
Yeah, Dustin, it's a kind of a common narrative around here. Going into the season, I was a big believer in Indy. I was a big believer in the Colts, and one reason was because as a Lions fan, we needed a defensive tackle going into the offseason. I wanted Grover Stewart bad. I wanted him bad. Obviously stayed in Indianapolis. But DeForest Buckner, he was out for a little while. Now that he's come back, what do you think that the Lions, because when you look at Indianapolis statistically as far as yards given up, they're at the bottom of the ranks. They're pretty far down there. What do you think Lions should expect now that DeForest Buckner and Grover Stewart are healthy as far as stopping the run game and getting to Jared Goff?
Yeah, I mean, this Colts defensive line is night and day when Buckner and Grover are healthy and when they're not. Last year, we saw it when Grover Stewart was suspended for a few games. Their run defense plummeted from one of the best in the NFL to one of the worst. This year, Buckner goes on the IR and has to miss the first games of his NFL career, and ends up being bad enough that he has to miss at least 4. Misses those games, and the Colts defensive line goes from being a consistent pressure-based team to being below average in just about every statistic you can look at. His first week back, there were still some hiccups, still some growing pains, but he's back fully healthy at this point. It feels like as fully healthy as you can be in November. But he's out there and he's making a presence. And I think it opens up things for so many of these guys. I mean, we've seen Kwity Paye and Leatu Latu have multiple solid reps consistently over these past few weeks. And I think it's because Buckner and Grover are there to be able to not allow quarterbacks to just step up in the pocket when pressure comes around them. And I mean, Jared Goff is a guy that gets the ball out quick. I mean, that's one of the things the Lions offense likes to do, as you guys know. And the Colts saw that in the Jaguars loss that they had, because that's what the Jaguars made a very key point to do, was get the ball out quick. Buckner didn't play in that game. And I think that was a big reason that there was just no pressure throughout that day, and why Jacksonville was kind of able to do whatever they wanted. And they've made a lot of adjustments since then. So I'm really excited to see this one, because I think this is the first offense that's going to have a similar mindset to what Jacksonville did that week. You guys just happen to be better in every area.
Yeah.
That Jacksonville streak you guys are going through is no joke right now either. Going in.
If you don't believe in curses, just look at the Colts record in Jacksonville for the last decade, and you'll start to believe.
Yeah. Oh, we believe in curses in Detroit here. All right, the curses are real. Well, Destin, I want to ask you about the just the weapons. I feel, and I will say, man, the Colts got a nice collection of weapons. In the Lions, the cornerback room, a little banged up this week. They're getting their starter Carlton Davis. He's dealing with a broken thumb. Taron Arnold's banged up. They got a couple guys. One guy's already ruled out, Ennis Rakestraw, the other rookie, and then Emmanuel Mosley's coming back. They banged up corner room facing, Josh Downs, who's playing very well. Dropped him in fantasy. Thank you, by the way. Someone picked him up. He's playing great. And then you have, of course, Michael Pittman and A.D. Mitchell. What's kind of your thoughts on the matchup there? Because I will say Anthony Richardson, his arm talent, he can push the ball downfield, but the Lions got those 2 safeties that are, of course, top of the NFL in interceptions. What do you think of that matchup, the Colts weapons versus this secondary?
Yeah, I mean, the Colts like to take deep shots, and I would love to say that will take a step back because of how good the safeties are in Detroit. But knowing Richardson, you give him an inch, he's going to try and go for the mile. So I wouldn't rule it out. But, I mean, I don't think you can say enough good things about Branch. I mean, I don't even know if safety does him justice for how good of a player and what all he's asked to do in that defense. So he's definitely a guy that I'm nervous about. It'll be interesting to see how much they use him deep, or if they are going to use him to just completely shadow Josh Downs out of the slot. Because, I mean, the Colts offense is at its best when Josh Downs is being operated as their receiver 1 right now, especially with Michael Pittman playing through a back injury. You can tell that that's been hindering his abilities. So Josh Downs has been that third down conversion receiver. That's who they've looked at. And then you've seen Adonai Mitchell take some big steps these last couple of weeks, and Alec Pierce has been one of the better deep threat receivers in the entire NFL all season long. We saw it last week, even on that last drive where Richardson drives down the field to get the touchdown. He's the one that makes the big play to get them into scoring range.
Hey, Destin, we had the conversation before you hopped on. I wasn't sure if you were able, if you hopped on and heard it a little bit. But just on the Colts side, going into a game like this, what do you think are like the keys for them to be able to just try, like, to be in position to win this football game? I mentioned, just playing a smart football game, not dumb penalties, creating turnovers, things like that. What are your thoughts? Do you think there's a chance they're able to keep this game close? And if so, How do you think what's the formula of doing it for them?
Yeah, I mean, this Colts team has done a solid job at keep being in every single game they've played. Obviously, the Buffalo game gets a little bit out of hand at the end, but I mean, for those that watched it for 3.5 quarters, that game was a 1-score game. Things kind of, like I said, got bad at the end, so that's the only non-1-score game they've had this season. But they like to they find ways to stay in there. They're not a team that's gonna just punch out like I feel like we saw with Jacksonville last week with you guys, for example. Not to hound on them, they beat us, so can't go too much on them, but but like that game, I just don't think will be the case in Indy. I think like I said earlier, I think they really figured out their identity last week in using the run game to get Richardson comfortable early with his legs, to where he's a little bit more comfortable when he has to drop back as a passer. And they opened it up last week to where they got him on the move off the snap to be able to throw in motion. And I feel like that even got him just so much more comfortable than just having to sit in the pocket all game long. I think that played a big factor. So we're hoping to see that confidence kind of build there. But I think the keys to victory here, you have to make sure Jared Goff is uncomfortable if you're Indy's defense, because he's a guy, if you get comfortable, we've seen him have how many perfect games at this point with Detroit. Right. If you allow him to just get in the motion and take the easy one, go and go and go, he will. Like he's not scared to just eat you slowly instead of having to make this full course meal. Like he's a guy that is willing to just take it slowly but surely. And this Colts defense has struggled against that style of quarterback. So Gus Bradley, the last couple of weeks, he's drastically increased his blitz rate. He's drastically increased the variety of his coverage systems. He's gotten a little bit weird. Like I've been saying to people that he reminds me of like that hip uncle that you're seeing at like Thanksgiving, that like he just wants to tell you all these new things he's learning online. Like that's been Gus Bradley this year. It really has. Like I feel like that, like this last month, that Gus Bradley just all of a sudden has just adjusted what he's been doing, and it's worked. Like this Colts defense has looked drastically improved, and I think that's got to show this week. Like I feel like we need to see him be a new shell of himself. Like he's going to have to get creative. He's going to have to make changes, because if you don't get Jared Goff uncomfortable early, that this game can get out of hand.
And kind of that goes perfectly into what I was about to ask you, Dustin. When you look at Gus Bradley, like you said, it's been kind of all over the place. There's been some weird looks. What do you think when he looks at Jared Goff, when you want to stop him outside of getting to him? They got to stop Amon-Ra St. Brown. What are Colts fans expecting to happen with Amon-Ra St. Brown, and how do you think Gus Bradley is going to game plan for Amon-Ra?
Yeah, so it's been an interesting year. I mean, I think all offseason, all preseason, all training camp, it was just a talk about how young this secondary was and not knowing what it was going to look like. Obviously, entering the year, there was a lot of thoughts about Juju Brents and Jalen Jones being the starters day one. Juju Brents gets hurt early in the season, so now they had to adjust and pivot. And the starting corners for the majority of the season, outside of Kenny Moore in the slot, who's just one of the best slots in the NFL, it has been Jalen Jones, that 2023 7th-round pick, and then a waiver wire pickup from the 49ers in Samuel Womack III. And they've outplayed their expectation by a mile. Like these kids play hard. These kids have made life hard for a lot of receivers, and a lot of number one receivers. I mean, outside of the Justin Jefferson performance with the Vikings, like they've been able to maintain the top receiver on these teams at a pretty good rate. Devontae Adams had some fourth quarter stuff that kind of made his stats look a little bit better at the end, but for the majority of that game, he was held in check. The Dolphins game, they didn't have Tua that game, so that obviously puts some clouded stuff on that. But Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle both only have one catch in that game, combined for about 20 yards. So they've found a way to slow down receivers in that sense. Now, the Jared Goff and Amon St. Brown combo might be one of the best they play this season. It's probably right up there with Nico Collins and CJ Stroud. So it'll be really interesting to kind of see what they do. And I know they like to use Amon St. Brown in multiple different ways. So it'll be interesting to see how many of these corners get matched up there.
Hey, Destin, you're an Indy guy, and I got to ask you about the Pat McAfee, Zaire Franklin beef we got going on.
It's interesting.
You got Pat going on air and saying fucking Lions by 20. Put the line at the 20.5. What do you think the McAfee influence has kind of been on this locker room? It seems like they're getting motivated from it. Do you think these guys are using it as motivate? What do you think of that whole situation there with Zaire? I know they have guys calling out people in the locker room like Kenny Moore saying guys aren't working hard. What are your thoughts on the whole narrative there?
So, I mean, you're going to hate my answer because it's going to sound like political playing Switzerland, but this is what I've said all day and just my personal belief on this. The Zaire Franklin comments with EJ Speed, if you watch the podcast, you see everything he's talking about. It was basically just going to bat for your quarterback. To me,
right.
I really didn't see any issue with it. And I'm pretty pro this new wave of current athletes having podcasts to be able to tell and show their own narratives and not allow other people to write them for them. So I'm pretty pro that. Now I know some people have different opinions on it and get all up in odds about Franklin and Speed's podcast, about Paul George's podcast in the NBA. There's so many people that have different vibes about that stuff, but personally I'm pro it. And then the McAfee stuff, Franklin doesn't talk about McAfee directly. He did use him as the thumbnail, which I probably made it worse for the podcast.
Good marketing.
Hey, I mean, we all knew who he was talking about, even though he didn't say it. So putting it there isn't that big of a deal. But all I do know is Pat McAfee goes on, says what he says, puts the stats up from Zaire Franklin's college stuff.
Disrespectful.
Some crazy stuff. But I mean, I think Pat even alluded to it a little bit when he was talking about it. He's like, if that locker room's using me as motivation. So when he says the Lions by 20.5, I almost feel like he was probably fueling that part of it.
Right.
I think both sides had reasons to take the shots that they did. I don't think it's as big of a deal as everyone else does. I mean, Pat McAfee's a season ticket holder, has a suite right behind the end zone. He's going to be there the next home game, still rooting on the Colts. That's not going to change. Zaire Franklin, leading the NFL in tackles, is still going to be doing what he does. So I really do not think it is as big of a deal as people do. I think it's two very outspoken individuals speaking on a topic that they happened to be on opposite sides of about a month ago when the binging happened. So I don't think it's going to be that big of a deal going forward, but it's been a fun day for sure.
Hey, Destin, I want to have double part question. Are you an Indiana fan? Hoosiers?
Oh, yeah. Hey,
oh my God.
Let's talk about it. I just want to know.
10-0, Hoosiers by a million.
Let's go.
Hoosiers by a million.
I hate
tomorrow at noon.
We're all Michigan fans, but we've got an Ohio State guy.
Michigan. Jeff doesn't claim Michigan, but he lives in Michigan. Booner, big Michigan guy.
Blue,
I'm an Ohio
baby.
State fan, okay? I live in Toledo. Let's just have a real talk, okay? Penn State poses more of a threat to Ohio State than Indiana does. Can we not both admit that?
Oh, he ain't gonna admit that. No way.
Here's the thing. You can say that. But
you, baby.
I mean, when you watch Penn State, in any game that they've been this season, take out the Ohio State loss. When you watch Penn State, do you ever just sit there oh man, this is an exciting brand of football? No, you don't. You probably don't even smile while watching Penn State this year, unless you're watching Tyler Warren stats and highlights only. When you watch Indiana, it doesn't matter who they I understand you can go on and on about who they've played, but every single game they've played in, there's just been moments where you're on the edge of your seat because of how exciting that brand of football is. I'm an IU fan. You can take that as you want to take it when I say it, but I truly believe Ohio State is more worried about this game than they were worried about Penn State. I do. I feel it. And we'll see. We'll see what happens tomorrow at noon. We'll see what happens tomorrow at noon. Hoosiers by a million, but I'll take by 1 too if that's what it needs to be.
Let's go. Hey, Destin, I'm on your side. Hey, I'm on IU side. Ohio State, I hope they lose by a million tomorrow. I'm with you.
Hey, Destin, I need your score prediction here. Score prediction, but not for. I
assume we were going back to the Colts Lions.
Yes.
That prediction won't be by a million. I hate being asked score predictions. That's not a shot at you guys. It's a shot at just the question overall.
I get it.
One of my least favorite, but I'll say. I think the Lions are the better team. At the end of the day, I don't think this will be a blowout like we've seen the last.
Do you think they covered the 7.5?
You
can answer that way. You think they covered the 7.5?
I think what I will be saying is 27-17. 21.
Okay.
So I have them covering it. And like I said, I hate score predictions, and having to do it on the spot, always a fun one. But I mean, I think 27 is around what I could expect them giving up in this game. If it gets much more than that, that'll be when I'm a little bit worried about covering. But I think this Colts offense found, like I said a lot earlier, I think they found out a lot about themselves this past week. So I'm really excited to see what Shane Steichen's game plan with that is now. Because last week you go into it with that new run-heavy scheme, and you don't really know how it's going to go. You see Richardson have his career day in that type of scheme now. So I'm really excited to see what game 2 of that looks like. Hopefully it's more of what we saw last week, if not better, because taking a step back at this point of the season with everything that's been going on in Indy will be a long week for everybody involved.
Yeah, I mean, we're fired up about this game. I'm a little nervous. I see a lot of people are kind of hammering the plus 7.5, so they think it'll be a little closer. I'm curious, but Destin,
Pat McAfee definitely hammered it. He hit the 7.5 plus some.
Yeah, he could probably move the line with that man's net worth. Great job today, Destin. You keep up the great work, my friend. Appreciate you joining the show as always. It's always fun to get to talk to other beat writers, but you guys can follow him, Destin Adams on X. And Destin, good luck this weekend, my friend.
Yep. Appreciate everybody. Follow me for any Colts coverage, any draft
Let's
coverage.
go.
Make sure you're following me. And of course, before I go, Hoosiers by 1,000,000.
There you
love
go.
it. I love that.
Destin Adams joining the show. That Hoosiers, I didn't expect Klotz. He didn't want to get in that deep.
Legend.
Klotz didn't want to get in that deep.
I didn't want to get too heated with the guys.
This video is brought to you guys by BetUS. Hey, what's going on there? It's Jeff Iafrate. Appreciate you for finishing the video. You can check out one of the videos here suggested or show support by commenting, liking, and subscribing. And buy your merchandise, officialctsports.com.